My question, Minister, is to ask any new taxation policies your department is considering to stem the exodus of private landlords from the private rented sector.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Shanahan. The Government is acutely aware of the difficulties in the housing market, and as I've said on many occasions, the key problem is the lack of supply. This is why the Government is committed to increasing the supply of all types of homes, social, affordable, rental and owner-occupier. The Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage has primary responsibility for housing policy. As part of the Housing for All Action Plan update published last November, I understand that his department will undertake a review of the private rental sector. I expect that this review will take into account the significant regulatory changes over the past number of years and will ensure that our housing system provides an efficient, affordable, safe and secure framework for both landlords and tenants. The exiting of small landlords from the private rental sector is a consequence of multiple factors: a changing regulatory environment which has been necessary to ensure a fair and effective residential rental sector that balances tenants' rights and landlords' responsibilities has resulted in a challenging compliance framework for some. The recent rise in house prices has also prompted some landlords to sell their rental properties. Fears of legitimate access to their properties without encumbrance arising future policy decisions have been cited by others, and of course the changing interest rate environment also has a direct impact on many landlords and the decisions that they are making. In relation to landlords subject to income tax, rental income is part of the total taxable income of the landlord. Individual landlords may be subject to income tax at their marginal rate of tax, in addition to which USC and PRSI also apply. I would make the point that there is already a range of tax-based measures in place to support private landlords. These measures include 100% mortgage interest relief, the new retrofitting allowance introduced in Finance Act 2022, and a number of other deductible expenses. For example, owners of rental properties are entitled to claim deductions of up to €10,000 against rental income from that premises for various expenses incurred prior to it being first let after a 6-month period of non-occupancy.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Shanahan.
Thank you, Count Corla. Minister, firstly I want to declare my interest here, as I own a very modest rental property in Waterford. But the private rental sector is in chassis, as you know, and small private landlords are leaving the sector in their droves. And the fact is that every business decision, investment decision that is made is based on a range of push and pull factors. And in the private rental market at present, Minister, there are now many push factors to get out and none really to pull people in back into the sector. And if you look at the treatment of private landlords versus the institutional investors, closed companies, for instance, pay almost 70% taxation on their rental income, whereas, as well you know, foreign parent companies with subsidiaries here can nearly nullify their tax liability to almost zero. And that is a major problem. It means that we are only getting institutional investment partners in, and I think most tenants would be better off with a private landlord, far easier to deal with, I would suggest, than many institutional investors. And I also think one of the reasons why there are still properties unlet in Dublin by institutional investors is because of the very benign taxation policy that they enjoy, and they can afford to keep apartments unrented in order to keep a floor under the value and the price of them.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Shanahan. And look, I think the truth is that there are many reasons why individual landlords decide to leave the market, and the numbers are clear, and the trend and pattern here is unequivocal. Many are making the choice to get out of the market at this time. You raised the question of tax. I think that is one element, but there are other elements as well. It is about the fact that property values have increased significantly. Many landlords who were in negative equity are now out of negative equity and are taking the opportunity to exit. And the buy-to-let interest rates have increased as well. And for many, it makes it more difficult now for being a landlord to be a viable proposition. The issues around the taxation of the rental sector will, as is always the case, be examined in the context of the budget, and that work now is getting underway and will conclude in the autumn when the budget is presented.
Deputy Shanahan.
Thanks, Minister. Minister, I think that, okay, and you've signalled in the budget, but I think you do need to do some kind of novel and review of taxation strategies, because it's a significant problem. The demographic getting out of the sector are older. The people who are younger do not have the ability, and they certainly don't have the ability to come in with 30 or 40% of equity to buy a buy-to-let property. They don't have the ability to save that type of money, and we're basically now favouring the market in terms of institutional investors. And as I said to you, closed companies in this country can end up paying up to 70% taxation on their rental income. That is not sustainable. They are companies that have money. They could be invited into the sector. I would say to you, Minister, that maybe PRSAs need to have an ability to bring capital assets into the pension fund. And again, they are not allowed to do that at the moment. They are precluded, only able to buy investment properties and equities. And maybe it's time to look again at some of the sectional reliefs that were in place many years ago in terms of trying to give a really substantial tax write-off in terms of investment.
Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. I've made the point in the House previously, we do need to be careful in using taxation policy in the context of the property market. I think there is a time and a place, and there are measures that are appropriate if they are designed properly. But I do think it is worth making the case that, taxation is paid on the profit. There is already a significant amount of reliefs there. I've already mentioned the 100% mortgage interest relief. There are a whole range of deductible expenses that are allowed for landlords, including the cost of maintenance, repairs, insurance, management of the property, property management fees, the cost of registering a tenancy with the RTB, the cost of letting, such as letting agency fees, and the cost to the landlord of any goods provided or services rendered to a tenant. In addition, you have a range of wear and tear allowances in respect to furniture, fixtures, fittings, and so on, at a rate of 12.5% per annum over a period of 8 years. But what I am committing is that we will be reviewing all of this in the context of the budget with a view to bringing forward some measures for the rental sector.